everyone. So I'm joined by Frank Meschkuleit. How are you
Sounds
doing
like
today?
I'm doing great. How's about yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Good.
So you came back into this role after a decade. Was the last time you voiced this character. What was
Yeah.
the hardest thing to do to kind of get back into this role?
You know what it's like? It's like if you used to be able to bench press 200 pounds and then you stop for 10 years and someone says, "Hey, can you pick up this 200-pound thing for me?" And you go, I'm not sure. Because Tupi's a lot of constriction. To get that sound out of me, I have to really squeeze, and it's a lot of air. And when we were doing the series, I used to do like a 4-hour call. And at that point, my head felt like it was this big, like a balloon. And I can get a lot done in 4 hours, luckily, but I couldn't do 10 hours of Tupi. It's a lot of work. So when I came back for the film, I thought, man, can I still do this? And I was like in the privacy of my own home, kind of trying to figure it out. And the answer was, fortunately, yeah, pretty much.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And luckily in this movie, there's a bunch of other characters, as you'll see, and you can see in the poster here. So it's not just Tupi all the time, which is great. It gives me a little break, and it meant that we could get the whole thing recorded inside of a week.
Wow, that's actually very impressive that you're able to do that in under a week. Um, was there any input you had on the story of the movie itself?
On the movie, no. When we were doing the series, Khalil, there was oftentimes little random synapse fires that I'd throw into the reading, and I was always thrilled when they made it through to the final. But the movie, I think, was very carefully crafted by Dominique Jolin and Raymond Lebrun and the other creative forces responsible for that. And so when we got to do the script for Tupi, it was a locked script. There wasn't really, is it the odd little thing, or certainly inflection, is something that's always open for personal interpretation. So we try a couple of swings at a bunch of the lines to find the best way to say it. But the script was pretty much really good when we started.
So was there anything that you were kind of like, oh, I don't know if I would have done it like even in your mind, kind of, I don't know if I would have done it like that. And you were like, okay, let's try it and see what happens.
When you're working in the creative business, you always have an opinion, but there's a time and a place, and when you get hired to come in and do something very specific, that was my main focus, was to get the voice as close to the original, as pure as I could make it. And over the years, Tupi's changed a bit too. He's always 11 out of 10 on the energy scale. But I found there's places where he can be softer too, and he can be like, I can't wait to go on this adventure with my best friend Binu, of course. So there's these gear changes, I refer to them as, where I try to work them in so that the character has more color and isn't just red, but in
Right.
fact more shades in the spectrum, and that makes the performing always fun, and it leaves so much room for spontaneous inclinations and other people's thoughts. And then in the end, you end up with multiple takes of a tricky line, and someone in post decides, no, that's the one. That's the best version. And it may have something to do with a sight gag or some visual thing that we don't see when we're recording the audio, because we record the audio first and they animate to it. There was a storyboard, but the little
Right.
bits in between get decided well after we're done the voice record.
So this is something which I always find fascinating, and it's when you have voice actors in general doing voices, and you obviously recording them in a room, sometimes with other people, sometimes on your own, depending on the situation. Is it ever awkward when you're kind of going to that voice in that different, I guess, place mentally when you have, if there's other people in the room?
No, I've been a puppeteer for over 40 years. And when I first started working, I was lucky. I started with the Muppets, and I used to watch them contort their face, to get the sound that they needed for their puppet that was over their head. And I thought, oh, how can they do that? I'd be so embarrassed. There is no shame left in me in that regard. I'm happy to just turn on a voice and do whatever it is I have to do to get a sound that is, the appropriate sound for that situation. And I find, as a puppeteer, the voice supports the puppet. So if the voice is right, then your puppet is very much alive and organic, and it's very easy to suspend disbelief. But if you hear a puppet, you're watching a puppet bit and the voice is wrong, you know, some part of just about everyone who watches it is probably going to go, yeah, it's not, I don't really buy that. It's like having a character who's an old man, but his voice is like a young girl, you know, it's a choice, but I'm not sure it's the right one.
So in this movie specifically, I think there's a lot of moments where, like you said, there was depth to be more than, I guess, it's, you've seen pretty much at all before. And was that in a sense because it was going to be longer, and it felt, and like there was kind of a sense of like you can't have this guy on 11 the entire time because it's going to get a very repetitive and boring very quickly.
Yeah, I think that the reason they have all these extra characters here as well is partly an answer to your question. I'm not sure Tupi on his own with Binu could sustain 70 minutes. You know, it's possible, but most certainly there's a a very central core of Tupi and Binu's adventure, but they're supported by this other cast. So you get a break from that level of intensity, and each of the characters has their own very specific personality, and they're beautifully rendered, and the voice work is great across the board. So it's the film really works well for people who are very interested in seeing a Tupi and Binu movie, and it works well for people who are interested in seeing a good story for kids. You know, the characters are all, they have their own quirks, they have their own fears, and the story is solid. So if you're a parent and you want to take your kids to something, you can go see Tupi and Binu the movie, and there will be something for everybody in that film.
I can tell you, even people who grew up watching Tube and Vino, like me, are gonna like I absolutely loved it. And I've been telling everyone they have to go watch it. So, I think it's gonna be. I think it's something for all ages, quite literally, which is nice because it kind of the timing of the show and the movie now. So
Have you seen it, Khalil?
I have seen it. Yeah, I
And you
saw
like
it.
it?
I loved it. I was like in this moment of like nostalgia the entire time I was watching it, and I was like, this is my. I literally went to a Tupi and Binu live on stage show when I
Oh,
was like young. So I
yeah.
was um now what was the pitch to you to kind of come back? Was it automatically in your mind like I'm doing this absolutely, or did you have to kind of, did they have to kind of sell you on it?
Well, they did. I was thrilled and flattered that, after, as you said, a 10-year absence, that they were still willing to use me for Tupi's voice. And I felt like I still had lots to offer. So absolutely, I was stoked the minute I heard about it. The big question was, can you 10 years later, can you still, because you get older, right? And your voice changes, and I wasn't 100% sure that I could deliver the same level of energy and intensity that I could when we first started the show. But like I said, I found a private place in my home and started practicing, and I went, yeah, it's still in there. It's still, and as soon as I start, it's a funny thing. Like when you're puppeteering as well, you're in a horribly awkward physical position. You've got to legs really open because I'm a tall guy and I got to get short and hide my head and make my puppet scene. It's all really uncomfortable until you start rolling, and then everything it's just you're in that place in your head where these things come out of. So as soon as I start doing the Tupi voice, even if we're just chit chatting here and I go into Tupi, it's just like a door opens and Tupi's head pops out in my head and he goes, "Here we are. We're doing the voice now. It hurts, but I don't care." And so it just becomes this thing that you do, and it's reflexive. And my level of commitment to it, as soon as I start it, you can't half do Tupi. Where's everybody? There's nothing there.
Yeah.
I can't improvise like that. But if I have the force of the air pushing out past my vocal cords, it commands me, excuse me, to inhabit the character and to be that character. And it kind of almost happens by itself.
Was there so what was the first, like going back to kind of, I think 2003 was the first time you kind of took on this role. What was the initial pitch to you to kind of like to make you kind of say this, I want to do this character?
Well, like any other creative process, or how it started, I auditioned for it, like you would, pardon me, for any other role. And a bunch of real heavy hitters came out. Like I'm a puppeteer first and foremost, but I do voices to support the puppetry I do. And I was asked to do an audition because at the time I was voicing a claymation series called Dragon, and Dragon had 7 or 8 nine, at least seven characters, and I did all the characters, which was it's a lovely show. I really liked it. And because of that, I got an audition to come in for Tupi. And the stuff I was trying out, they were like, yeah, kind of. And as a last ditch effort, I said, can I try one thing, just something in my mind, because they were guiding me how they thought the voice might need to sound. And when I saw this picture of Tupi and he had his lips pursed like he was whistling, I looked at it and went, what is this guy saying? What's coming out of his head? And the first thing that came out was this, oh boy. And I went, oh yeah, that's it. And as soon as I had that, like everything else just kind of bust out and never went back in. And I wasn't confident that you never know, right? You think, oh, I smashed that audition, I'm going to get it. And you never hear from them again. And other ones you go, oh boy, I was really low energy today. And then they call you for a callback. I got Tupi and I was thrilled to help develop the character early on a little bit. And then it became its own thing. And I just ran as hard as I could to keep up.
And when you're walking down the street, do you just sometimes, like, if you see a kid, will you just kind of go into that voice and just see what happens?
I need someone to adore me for a moment. No, I actually enjoy my anonymity as a puppeteer and as a voice guy. You walk down the street and no one will ever give you a second look. There's fools, don't they know we're talking with Khalil? Oh yeah. I do enjoy my anonymity, but thank you so much. But once or twice a year, it'd be great if someone was like, "Oh, aren't you the guy who?" And but no, I'm actually, I've lived well. I've lived fine without that. It's kind of neat just to be able to do this stuff and nobody knows except you and me, Khalil.
Yeah, and everyone who watches this is gonna know who you are too.
Yeah, I'll have
But
to get a haircut and facial surgery.
just make yourself look more like Tupi, and then you're good.
Yeah, I'll try. That's a lot of surgery though.
So I think I want to go back to this anonymity thing because it's interesting. It's an interesting contrast because there's a lot of people, even in the voice acting business, who absolutely, want to be, recognized and sometimes get frustrated that they aren't recognized enough for their work, right? And I think you're seeing it now in a lot of animation where they even try to make faces similar to those of the people acting, just to kind of give them something in that sense. Now you don't get any of that because obviously you don't look like Tupi. I don't know if that's a compliment or not. We'll go with it being a compliment, but you don't look like Tupi. So just to kind of wrap it up, because I know you have to go to another interview, because you're a very busy man. What was your favorite part of the movie, or like kind of your favorite moment, I guess, in making it?
What was really cool was working in a sound booth with one, two, three, four other four or more actually voice people at the same time. Because when we were doing Tupi, Binu doesn't speak, as you know, so it's just me in a box with a glass wall, pumping out all this energy and kind of looking through the glass at the producers and seeing if they were happy with it. But being able to tell the story, and each of us would say a line, and then there'd be a little pause, and the next person would say their line, and then that person, I didn't have to do all of it. It was a collective. And that's, I think, part of what makes this movie so strong and so enjoyable.
And which character outside of Tupi, obviously, are you excited for audiences to see?
Oh gosh. I like the twins, the twin birds. I think they're pretty fun because they're so not twins.
I can agree. The when they introduce themselves as twins, I was like, this is going to be a good movie.
Yeah. Either
That
that
was
or
the moment.
yeah. No, it was a good movie. I think everyone there enjoyed it. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Colin.
No, it was great. And literally, last question. I know I'm getting right to that point. But is there going to be a sequel, or is there any talk of a sequel at this point? Or...
Yes. Let's talk
Yes?
about. No, I have no idea, but I would love that. It would be
So
great.
hopefully the sequel, and then we'll do this again when the sequel comes out.
And we'll have stronger internet connection. I look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again so much for taking the time. And everyone should check out the movie. I'll do a proper exit thing, but do you want to say anything before you head off?
Yes.
So go ahead and check out Tupi and Binu the movie. We're waiting for you.
Thank you.